Hello and welcome to episode number 7 of Believe Something Better.
I can see your face.
Okay guys, so I'm here to talk to you today mainly about translations of the Bible. It's a question that's been coming up a lot. I'm going to lower this computer screen here because, I've been doing 1, Bible rebinds, and 2, I've been doing that series of This is My Bible and showing you study habits, reading Bibles, things of that nature. So I wanted to do a episode of my normal show on Bible translations, and because it's rather important that we look at Bible translations, the first thing I want to tell you is any Bible translation that is faithful to the source material is a good Bible translation, and that may fly in the face of some of the things you've seen, and some of you may be choosing to turn off my show at this point. I hope that you don't. I really do, but that's where we stand. As long as it's faithful to the source material, no matter the philosophy they've chosen, whether it's idiomatic philosophy, aka a thought for thought translation, or formal translation idea, aka word for word, both of those are good. It's just a matter of being faithful to what's there. And so we'll get into that, and we'll also get into the very final third category, which is paraphrase and why I don't really like those. But so let's first start off with just translation. So the first thing that I want you to be aware of is it has this Mason symbol on it. And if you watch my other one, this is my Bible. You've seen this Bible before. It is just a King James. I have read through this Bible. I have looked through it numerous times, come many different readings, and it's just a King James Bible. Now, the thing that's weird about this King James Bible, let's see where I can get to Genesis here. Well, there's the title page to the actual Bible. Now look at all of these pages of information here in the front matter. Now that's the weird thing. You can see that the different angles of the of masonry right there. But when it comes to the scripture, it's just a faithful King James Bible. It's not anything different in that respect. And I want to start with the King James because the King James is really kind of the major translation that got the Bible into English. You know, there were Bibles before that. You have Wycliffe, who translated from the Latin into Middle English. You have some Old English ones. Now, King James English is not Old English. King James English is early modern English. It's the same English that Shakespeare was writing, and that again is not Old English. That's early modern English. And before early modern English, which is King James English, you have something called Middle English, which was kind of a bridge between Old English and modern English. And then Old English before that, which is actually in a lot of cases is really High German. We're not going to go there. That's a language lesson, and that's not what we're here for. But the King James Bible really was the most successful historically to get the Bible into English. There was a more successful Bible already being published called the Geneva Bible. That was more popular outside of the United Kingdom. It was kind of made illegal in the United Kingdom due to the fact that they felt like it was anti-monarchy. But really the King James, that's why it's lasted until today. But the King James Bible, it's just not applicable to us today anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is the most beautiful translation. I think it retains beauty that's just far and beyond what we can get out of a translation today. And you can see that in the Psalms. You can see that in just the lyricalness of it, and just this gorgeous. I mean, I read Psalm 23 and already on out of the King James already on this channel, and just so I mean, really a great starting point. And if you want to read the King James Bible, more power to you. Go for it. I mean, it's still the Bible, and that brings us to a discussion of Greek texts. Now, I have two Greek texts. Now, we don't have an original. That's the first thing that we need to understand. We don't have an original, but we have enough manuscripts that we're fairly certain on what the original was. But there's still different theories on how to approach collating the data that we have into an original. And one of those is called the eclectic text, where they take it from a few sources from the oldest. Each manuscript that they find, each piece of the Greek New Testament that they find, whether it's a manuscript or it's just a fragment or something, is given weight depending on, or quality statement depending on how old it is, how close to the original it is, and how much it also changes based upon a mean, I guess, of everything. I'm not sure. Maybe a mean of just the oldest. I don't know, because you have some weird ones like the BSB Codex, which is fun to look up. But from the eclectic text, you get the modern critical edition of the Greek New Testament, which is this Nestle and Allen Novum Testamentum Graece. And the Novum Testamentum Graece is just Greek. I mean, if I hold it up here for you to see, you're just going to see Greek. No English on that page. And it's just one way to collate. And then another one, it's not, there we go, is called the majority text. Now, I don't have a copy of just the majority text, and there's actually a few different ways on which to translate, on which to collate the majority text, but I do have this, which is the New King James Greek English Interlinear New Testament. Now, the Greek in this Greek English Interlinear is the majority text, not the Textus Receptus. That's the majority text. The text now I've just brought up a third Greek text. So there should be a third one. And that third one is called the Textus Receptus. Now the Textus Receptus was a text that was collated on a few manuscripts, but a few late manuscripts by a guy named Erasmus, and that Greek text is where we get our King James New Testament from. Now, there's some odd things about that. I'm not going to go into that. It's safe to say that there are some odd things about that text that even the people call it the majority text. Is not the majority text. It is kind of a forerunner to the majority text idea, because you had Western and Eastern readings, and the Textus Receptus and majority text lean towards the Eastern readings, whereas the eclectic text leans towards the Western readings. But it's not the majority text. That's actually three texts, and so that was translated from there. And so, yeah, I mean, you have to know that that's what's happening. When people try to sit there and tell you, oh, they removed this many verses from the Bible, there's been no verses removed from the Bible. In fact, any good translation, if you were to look up one of these verses, it would say in a footnote somewhere, older manuscripts include this verse. One very easy one to find is John chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. Right? Oh, where'd it go? Come on. I can read, I swear. John chapter 5. In most of our Bibles, people point out to you, hey, when you read it, it goes John chapter 5 verse 1, John chapter 5 verse 2, John chapter 5 verse 3, right there at the very bottom, page verse 3. Now I'm going to turn the page. There was no verse 4 on there. John chapter 5 verse 5 at the top of the page. There's no verse 4. But you see there's all sorts of little symbols at the end of verse 4. And then you come down here and you start reading about how other manuscripts, in this one it gives you all of this information about how these different manuscripts that they found include this. In the majority text, at least in this one, the apparatus merely just states that the NU, which is that text that I was just showing you, includes, then you omits those verses, is what it says. It just says, NU omits the rest of verse 3, and NU omits verse 4. So, no big deal. But then you open up something like the English Standard Version, and you can look at John chapter 5, and we get a footnote there. And that footnote says 3, 4, 5. That footnote says some manuscripts insert wholly or in part, waiting for the moving of the water. Verse 4. For an angel of the Lord went down at a certain season into the pool and stirred the water. Whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was healed of whatever disease he had. So, I mean, footnote. It's in a footnote. But so, I want to read the King James. More power to you. Make sure that you understand what you're reading. Because there are verses in the King James, there are words in early modern English that do not mean what they in this context, what they mean to us. Things like leasing. When I lease something, it means I'm renting it. When the King James says leasing, it means that it's a line. Instant. To do something, that means, I forget what that means. It's something about, just disappeared. And this is why you should always have notes. It just disappeared. But there are words that don't mean what they mean. What does it mean to, that they took a compass route? Doesn't mean that they pulled out a compass and they looked at it and there's north and they followed it. No, it means that they took a circular route, they compassed it. But yeah, I have all these translations sitting here. And really, most of it is just to point out that, you know what? I do a lot of comparative studies. So that was King James. New King James. This is just a cheap one. It's that I bought. I mean, the only reason I really wanted this is because at the bottom it still has all of the footnotes down there about the different texts going back and forth. But it's just a cheap one. It's fake leather. Bought at Walmart like for $10. New King James is a good translation. It translates the same material as the King James does, but it updates it to where you can read this and understand what is being said. So, if you are having a hard time going through this, but you still want that material, go through this one. They update the English to an English that is understandable. I mean, I don't even know if I can find it right now, but that they drew a compass route. Okay, that's literally in the King James. I should have markers, and I should have had. I mean, this would have been way faster, guys. I'm sorry. So that's Acts 23:8-13. It says, "And from thence we fetched a compass and came to Rhegium, and after one day the south wind blew, and we came the next day to Puteoli." Okay, so what does it mean to fetch a compass? Does it mean that they went down into the deep of the ship and they picked up a compass? And you can look it up in the New King James, and the New King James will actually update that for you, where it says, "And from there we circled round and reached Rhegium. After one day the south wind blew, and after the next day we came to Puteoli." So I mean, it updates it. It makes it make more sense, because that's the problem, in my opinion. The big problem with the King James is it just doesn't make sense to us anymore. Okay, now I personally like, as far as philosophy is concerned, I personally like a literal translation. That's word for word. Okay, now word for word is not right. We don't actually do a word for word translation. If there was any translation that really was word for word, it wouldn't make sense, because it wouldn't be English. And I can tell you, if you open up an interlinear, you open it up and you read a verse, any verse. So let's just start with verse Acts chapter 9 verse 19. It says, "And taking food, he was strengthened. Was now Saul with the in Damascus disciples days 3?" What the heck does that mean? And then you come over here, and if we put it in proper English and we read it, it says, "So when he had received food, he was strengthened. Then Saul spent some days with the disciples at Damascus." Some days, or 3 days, or however you want to put it. But the point is that it takes a translator to understand what that means. Guys, I hope that you guys are enjoying this video. I'm having to break it up into 2 pieces because I'm just getting a little long-winded. So with that being said, if you do like this video so far, I hope that you go down, you hit the like and subscribe button down below. And until next time, I pray that we've helped you to believe in something better.